All right, talked about real estate and REITs before. I wanted to talk a little bit more because recent pullback in a lot of stocks, so specifically the regional banks, but basically the whole market has pulled back quite a bit. And I think that the more the market pulls back, the more opportunities we are going to see to buy quality companies, right? I mean, something that I've stressed a lot, and a lot of people have stressed before, is that when you're going to buy stocks, REITs, doesn't really matter. Um, you're not worried about the price. You are worried about, are you buying a good business? Are you buying a quality business? That is what you are worried about. Frankly, most people probably would be better off if they did not see the price or even the recent price action of the REIT, of the stock. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is it a good company? Now again, what is a good company? That definitely does, there definitely is some opinion in there, but I think it's mostly easy to objectively point out. The other important thing that I always bring up is the valuation, right? And this is one of the main reasons that the price doesn't matter, right? The price does not matter. The valuation matters, right? Because there's a lot of companies that are really good, but they're crazy expensive, right? I mean, Tesla is an example of I would say a good company, but they're way too expensive, right? In my opinion, it makes no sense to buy them based on their current valuation, right? So, um, getting into real estate, there's a few areas that I wanted to talk about that I haven't talked about before. The first one is the life science area. And this is just an area that has a lot of potential for growth. And ARE, Alexandria Real Estate Company or Equities, again, they're a $21 billion company. They've came down a lot recently. I mean, if you go back a couple weeks, they're at 142. Now they're down to about 120 roughly. They're down 12% roughly over the last couple weeks. So they've gotten hit really hard. They do have a 3.8% dividend, 5.9% FFO yield. So that dividend is very safe. They are growing it fairly well. So again, this is a company that owns real estate, essentially that does research on life science, agritech, and other technology, right? Specifically New York, San Francisco, San Diego, Seattle, Maryland, and I believe Boston. So again, they own 432 properties. So again, they own properties in areas that in a sector that it has a lot of room for growth. They may not be the perfect areas, but they do have a lot of room for growth, right? A lot of room for growth. I think that this company's gotten beat up harder than it should have. I mean, if we check out its dividend, again, 3.8%. They are growing at about just over 6% per year. This company has also outperformed the S&P over the short run. It hasn't. The short run has actually underperformed by quite a bit. But if we go back 10 years, it's outperformed. If we actually, it's roughly even over 10 years. Let's go back about 15. It has underperformed. Let's go back 20. It has uh, outperformed. So over the long run, it roughly keeps pace, although certain periods it does outperform. And I think that it does have a lot of room to grow still, right? I think this is a good area to be in my opinion, right? So I don't have it on my watch list for some reason. I'm not going to add it there. Some other areas, I think just regular old housing, right? The classic, single family housing, like that's an area that's going well, just because in Canada, in the States, there still is a undersupply as far as that goes. The problem is you got to be careful which areas you're going in. That's something that definitely you need to be careful with. There isn't a REIT specifically off the top of my mind that I think is great for that. I mean, I would have to do a little bit more research on that, but that's an area that's going to do really good. Like I said, because the demand is still very high. As far as some other areas go, industrial I think is another area that I think is going to do very well. I've talked about some industrials REITs before. In Canada, we have Granite, we have Dream. In the States, there's Stag. There's some handful of other ones. There's actually one that I blanking on that I was looking into the other day. So there's a lot of good industrial REITs, and I think industrial it has done well, but I think it's got another leg in it because the next day shipping and all this Amazon and that kind of stuff, that stuff, yeah, it's going to be cyclical, but it's not going away, right? That stuff is not going away. So as far as real estate goes, I think you definitely need a high quality industrial REIT in your portfolio. You definitely need a quality residential one, and I think you could definitely benefit off having one of these more life science focused ones. Um, I would like to find a good medical properties one. The only problem is I haven't found one that's really good. Medical Properties Trust is pretty popular, although they have a lot of issues. There's Omega Healthcare, I know, although that one's dividend. I don't know if it's safe either. So, and in Canada, there's one as well, nwh.un. I haven't looked too much into that one, though. I would have to dig a little bit deeper. Everything I talk about, honestly, I'm pretty much going completely off the cuff. Um, so that's an area that I would like to find as well. As far as other areas go, um, data centers, right? Data centers is a big one. I've talked about Equinix before. I'm not sure if that's actually how you pronounce it, but that's how I'm going to pronounce it. I'm not sure what the ticker is off the top of my head here. There we go, EQIX. So they're basically worldwide, right? They're basically worldwide. So they do have a lot of properties outside the States. Current dividend is low, but they are growing that 8% per year. The payout ratio is stable. The main thing I'm worried about is that growth. But I mean, if you compare it to the S&P over the last 10 years, it's absolutely destroyed the S&P. Let's go back about 15, still absolutely destroyed it. If we go back 20, absolutely destroyed it. So data centers are definitely an area that, in my opinion, you want to find something. The next best one, in my opinion, is probably Crown Castle. I know Digital Realty is popular as well, but I think Crown Castle is probably better. This one's payout ratio is kind of high, but again, REITs are something that I wouldn't necessarily find it as a big red flag if their payout ratio is high, because typically they have to pay out large amounts of their income as a form of a dividend. They are growing it about the same, although the dividend is higher. As far as other areas go that I would be looking for real estate, honestly, that is the main thing. Like those are the main things. I have mentioned Innovative Industrial before. They own marijuana growing properties, for lack of a better way of putting it. That's probably the only other area because I think that this company, again, very high dividend, 8.68%, 86% payout ratio. Basically, they are growing that very quickly, very quickly. That's something I'd like to see, although obviously they're not going to be able to grow it that quick going forward. So those are the real estate areas, the subsectors that I would be investing in my opinion. Obviously, you want to do your own due diligence. Again, I've said it a million times. You also need to make sure you're not overpaying. Just because it's a good company doesn't mean you should be buying it at current prices, right? And the way you know that is, I mean, there's many ways, but the way that I go about looking at it is you simply look at the price to FFO, right? The price to FFO, that is the best way of valuing things for real estate. Again, and another important thing too is you need to look at their average, but you need to know, is their average comparable to the rest of the sector? Because there's some companies that a price to free cash flow of 20 is expensive, and there's other areas where that's cheap, right? So that's something you need to keep in mind as well. Compare it to other companies or the sector as a whole, right? If you take IIPR, their 5-year average is 31, which is expensive. That's very expensive. But now they're down to about 10, which is cheap. If we compare, let's take another look at EQ. At Equinix. So theirs is price to FFO of 21.7, 5-year average 24. So I would prefer to get this company a little bit cheaper, although they are below its average. And again, they are growing very, very quickly, which is why I'm okay to pay probably slightly more than I would want to pay. I'd prefer to get it below 20. And if you want to go back even further, I mean, let's just take like a popular stock just to make it super simple. Let's check out Apple here, right? So Apple, their average price to free cash flow over the last 5 years is 21. 24.8 is where they're at right now. So Apple is a little bit more expensive, right? And that's based on its valuation, right? So if we go to the freeform tool here, this is another good way of doing it because you can go back as long as you want, right? If we go back 10 years, the 10-year average for Apple price to free cash flow is actually 16.5. So it is definitely expensive. The lowest it's gotten is 8.5. That was actually in 2016 roughly. But if we go back, to the end of the year, it went down to 18, it went down to about 20 in June, and then in March of 2020 it came down to about 17. So if you go back about 5 years, Apple has gone below 20. It looks like about once, right? I mean, it went up a lot before March of 2020, but I mean, if you go back over the last, basically since the summer of 2020, it's only gone below 20 once. Right, so if you could get Apple below 20, that's where I would like to pick it up. Right, if you can get it below 20 or even 21, right? The average, again, that is above the average, so you got to keep in mind. But again, if we go to the 5-year, let's go to the 5-year. You're looking at 21.2. If we go to let's take like a 3-year average, you're looking at 24. So based on the last 3 years, it is almost right on that average. So again, you need to keep in mind that you don't want to overpay for stuff, right? You don't want to, and again, if you're dollar cost averaging, probably not the end of the world, but a lot of people don't dollar cost average, right? So if you're not dollar cost, even if you are dollar cost averaging, I would make sure you're not grossly overpaying. You do want to keep an eye on pricing, but if you're not dollar cost averaging, be very careful on valuations, right? Because that's something that bites a lot of people in the butt. And they wonder down the road, and maybe the price goes down and they panic, and a lot of unnecessary things happen, for lack of a better way of putting it. So anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up today. Real estate, I think that there's a ton of opportunity in real estate. There probably always will be a lot of opportunity in real estate, but you got to make sure that you're not chasing the past too, because that's something that a lot of people like to do, is that this sector subsector performed really good in the past, therefore it's going to in the future. It's not how it works, right? It's not how it works. Sometimes, yes, but not always. So that's what I wanted to bring up today. If you liked the video, hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.